Hello, everyone. Today we're going to look at the weather briefing, or my weather briefing for July 9th, 2017. Looks like it's going to be a very interesting day for parts of South Dakota and western to central Minnesota. Let's get right into it with the surface charts. Oops. There we go. So here's the surface chart. You can see the stationary front that's over Minnesota. That's going to help form those storms with an embedded high pressure and some low pressure surrounding the area. Looking around, we have a large cold front off of the east coast and another cold front off of the west coast with a large low pressure system just to the east of the occluded front. Not much going on in terms of the surface chart. We're going to look at the upper air analysis. This is the 500 millibar. Winds are from the west-northwest actually, at about 30 to 45 knots. Pretty strong. The reason for the storms in Minnesota was partially due to the ripples in the jet stream, and that's seen here on the 300 millibar. You go from 45 to 60, 55 knots back to 40. There's just a speed shear there. In terms of directional, they're both pointing the same direction pretty much. The 300 millibars is a little bit more out of the north, so that'll help a little bit with some spin. I'll show you guys that later in the forecast. Right now, visible satellite showing quite a lot of clouds throughout the country. Down south in Texas, we have a area of storms right here, mainly rain and possible lightning, but we also have a line of storms right here in Minnesota. Those are most likely going to help if they provide an outflow boundary. It might actually fire off the storms earlier than we expected. Taking a look at the infrared, you kind of see the same story. You see those higher cloud tops in the southern part of the country that I circled earlier, these ones right here. You also got some storms in Florida, and that line of storms that's in Minnesota is just not as visible on infrared because the clouds haven't reached a critical height yet. Looking at our water vapor imagery, we have some dry slot right through here, just through Arkansas, starting at Oklahoma. We got those storms as indicated by these greener areas. And again, that storm that's over Minnesota is not shown as much yet, but if it develops more, we might get a little bit more in terms of reflectivity, or not reflectivity too, but you'll see the colors more vibrant later in the day once those storms start. So this is the CONUS for radar at this time. As I said, there's our little line of storms. There's the storms down in Texas and Louisiana, and a small cluster of storms down in Florida. They all look like they're pretty much rain at the moment. There might be some lightning and thunder, but it's pretty calm right now. But we'll see how much that changes in the next couple hours as we get more heating and more instability. Right in our neck of the woods, it's fairly calm. There's just a few storms over Thief River Falls and just south of Roseau. Not too much in terms of storms going on right now, but we will be getting some more again as the day goes on. Looking in Minneapolis, you can see that band of storms that I was talking about. If we animate this and put it into motion, if I can find out where that is, there. You can see it's just a line that's moving basically parallel to the upper level winds. If you remember, both winds were, the 500 millibar was, or this is 300 that I'm drawing. And then if you go up in the atmosphere, you have a little bit more of a north, from the north flow. So those storms are pretty much following the exact pattern of the winds. Really cool. Going down to the south, As I said, it's just a large cluster. Let me move our recorder box here so you can see it all. So yeah, we got a lot of reflectivity, high reflectivity, most likely some lightning in some of these areas right over here. Let me change my color. And also a lot of scattered rain showers in this entire area. Switching gears to the SPC's convective outlook, we do have that area of enhanced risk. They did put that out for mainly for straight line winds, but there's an isolated hail and tornado threat is not to be diminished. Basically, the summary is that the severest thunderstorms are expected late this afternoon into tonight across the upper Midwest, central and southern Minnesota, northeast Iowa, southwest Wisconsin, and northwest Illinois, and they could also impact areas of South Atlantic coast into Georgia, Arizona, and portions of the Rockies. The specific discussion for upper Mississippi Valley, that's Minnesota, surface observations and visible satellite, place a surface low near far southeast North Dakota with a warm front extending southeastward towards southern Minnesota. Development is still expected in the vicinity of this low. The marginal and slight risk outlooks were extended back westward based on the location of the surface low. The previous discussion that they wanted to talk about was the shortwave trough moving across the area, and that was seen a little bit in here on our surface chart with this low pressure system right here. So the model, or not the model, the outlook is consistent with what is going to be happening in the next couple hours. Switching over to aviation concerns, surprisingly we don't have anything over these areas yet. But again, that will most likely will change in the next couple minutes or hours, because storms don't just happen in an hour, as far as I know, or minutes. Wow, I can't speak today. Forgive me. We have mainly convective sigmets, especially in the Texas Panhandle and Louisiana and along the Florida coast. Mainly convective sigmets for areas of thunderstorms with tops above 45,000. I've seen that pretty much with all these convective sigmets. So the storms are definitely causing some issues with that. Pilot reports from turbulence. We're getting light turbulence here in Minnesota at flight level of 15,500. And also across the area to our southeast, we're getting some light, some trace, and also some moderate reports of turbulence. Other than that, it's pretty calm right now, but it'll probably get a little bit more. We'll get more reports as the day goes on. Icing reports. We have a moderate icing from 16,000 to 23,000 feet flight level. And in Texas, where those storms are, a $26,000 flight level dollar. Yeah, I wish I had that much money. Freezing levels, they're really high up at this time. We're around 15,000 to 17,000 mean sea level. Over Minnesota, it goes down a little bit to 130 to 150, and that's hundreds of feet MSL. But it's fairly consistent across most of the country between 130 and 170 in hundreds feet of MSL. So at 15,000 or 13,000 to 17,000 feet MSL with across the nation. Low-level significant weather charts. Again, there's a moderate at 8,000 over Minnesota and South Dakota. There's a ceiling between 1,000 to 3,000 inclusive, and or visibility of 3.5 miles. And inside of that, where some of those storms were occurring, if you look back at radar, right over this area here, we have some of those. Let me get back to it. Where is it? Right here. We have the ceilings less than 1,000. Later in the day, it seems to be calming off or calming down throughout the evening. We just have a moderate or greater at 10,000. Going up to the high level, a moderate is expected from 25 to 410, which is 25,000 to 41,000 feet, where that jet streak is at about 90 knots is what I'm seeing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be blending in. And then there's the isolated embedded thunderstorms in that area. Along the coast, again, we have some of those isolated and just isolated. I thought I saw occasional. Isolated CB, which I'm assuming is for those storms as well. Looking ahead now at forecast models, this is the temperature for the 18Z wrap run. The temperatures are really warm. We're sitting here at 90, and up in Grand Forks is around the mid 70s. The temperatures they decrease overnight, and that's typical because that's what happens during the day when you lose sunlight. But let's take a look at dew point, see where our moisture values are at, and they're up there. 67 throughout the evening. It's going to increase to about almost 70 in some areas, which will really help these storms lift off. Looking at our 850, we have our theta E, which tells you the moisture and the temperature combined, and you can see the winds are out of the southwest. Excuse me, I was wrong. And that's bringing that moisture up, and then there's your low right here. Let me see if I can draw that. So low is right about there, and as the time progresses, the low shifts down to the southeast. Last thing I want to look here is the vorticity. You can see at around 7 o'clock or so, a vorticity max develops right where those storms are going to be popping up. So they're going to be keeping an eye on that. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that because my family just happens to live just east of that vorticity max, and I want to make sure that they are safe. Final thing that I want to look at here is the high resolution rapid refresh. It's a great tool for looking at the storms and also the NAM. We'll take a look at that before I finish here. But as we go ahead in time, there's that storm developing right there at 22Z, which brings us back to 5 p.m. And as we progress, they develop and they get storm helicity contours, which says that there's a significant amount of rotation or helicity inside those cells. They arrive in the Twin Cities area at around 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock possibly, and they linger for about an hour or two before passing on. These other storms that develop behind, there could be some more in this area as well. It depends on the stability or instability over the eastern part of the Twin Cities. So that pretty much wraps up this discussion. Anyone who has family living there, make sure that hopefully they're safe, and I hope that you guys stay safe out there as well. Have a wonderful evening, guys.